Today on Food for Thought, it's all about apples. I have a few tricks up my sleeve for making them the highlight on the plate. First, it's a French version of an apple pie, then as the star of a bright and crunchy apple citrus salad, and finally, as an accessory on a decadent ham sandwich. And later, my friend Yayo is coming over to help me shoot and sample my apple-inspired creations. Apples, they're everywhere, and they're one of my favorite fruits. Today, I'm looking for exciting ways to use them, starting with a twist on an American classic. Who doesn't love an apple pie? Well, today I'm doing a French version of it. It's called a tarte tatin, and basically it's just an upside-down apple tart. It looks beautiful on a platter, and it's really simple to make. First up, a really simple crust, and you can use it on any kind of pie, tart, savory, or sweet. So let's get started. So first, I'm going to cube my butter, and the really important thing here is that it's cold, ice cold. There's some people who are obsessed enough about their butter in their pie crust that they will refreeze it again and again just to make sure it is that cold. And the easiest way for me to cube butter is I just go half down the middle, like so. Tilt it, I go half again. And then I just cube it. And how can you tell if your butter is getting a little bit warm? You should be able to touch it, and you shouldn't have any residue on your fingers whatsoever. It should feel cold when you touch it. So if you need to chuck it back in the freezer, go ahead. So I'm gonna put my butter in a larger bowl because I am making this dough by hand. And you can definitely use a food processor if that's easier for you, but the texture and the tenderness of the crust is just so much better when you do it by hand. Next, I'm going to add my flour. And the thing here is when I combine my flour along with the sugar and salt, I'm gonna start making my crust. And you wanna use just your fingertips. You do not wanna use the palm of your hand. That is where all of the heat is, and you will really quickly melt your butter. The reason why I'm obsessing over whether my butter is cold or not is because if it smears, meaning if it melts a little bit, it'll connect with the flour around it, and that'll really create something a little bit denser, and I want a really light, flaky crust. So I'm mixing together my flour, sugar, and salt, and the trick here is I'm gonna take each little cube of butter and squeeze it with just my fingertips really lightly, and that's how I'm incorporating it into my flour. The texture I'm looking for is sort of the texture of sand, a bit damp, but it shouldn't be a cohesive whole whatsoever. If anything, it'll be a little bit on the shaggy side. And this recipe makes two crusts. So if you're doing, for instance, a traditional apple pie, this covers the bottom and the top crust. So this is basically ready to go. You can see that there's still really big chunks of butter in there. And what's gonna happen is when I'm baking my crust, the butter is going to melt and the water is gonna evaporate. So that creates air and lift. So basically your crust goes from this to that. So you get lots of tender flakiness. It's great. So next up, I'm adding a little bit of ice water. And this has been sitting in the fridge for a couple of minutes, so it's super duper cold. The thing about ice water too is you never really know how much you're gonna need in a crust. So you'll notice I added only about half the water I had set aside, and that's because you never know. With flour, if it's dry outside, you might need a little more water. If it's really wet and damp, you might need less. It's kind of by feel. And you don't want this to be super damp or gloopy whatsoever. It should just be shaggy and a little bit on the dry side. So this looks really good. It's kind of dry, barely coming together, and that's exactly how I want it. So next, I'm gonna divide this and wrap it in plastic wrap, and then stick it in the fridge. Well, these are ready to go in the fridge. They're good in the fridge for at least 3 days, but if you want to freeze them, they're good for a couple of weeks. So for the holidays, if you want to make a lot of pie, always keep them in the freezer and you'll always have fresh pie. So now on to the fun part, what goes into the tart. I have 8 apples here, but it basically depends on the size of your pan and how you put the apples in them. So to start, I'm going to be peeling and coring my apples. And for coring, it's pretty simple. I just use a melon baller. You don't really have to buy an apple corer for this. The apple is really key. You want to make sure you have a really high acid, full flavor, sturdy apple that'll stand up to baking. So an example of that would be Galas or Pink Ladies, but if you're not sure, just ask your grocer and they'll totally help you out. Okay, I'm all set to get started with prepping my skillet. And this is very simple, and this is why I love this recipe, is because it takes like 2 seconds to whip up. I have my 1 stick of butter, and I am just going to smush it in the bottom of the pan. And unlike the pie crust, this is allowed to smush and get melty and kind of gooey. And you just want to coat the entire pan as best as you can. And the reason why it's so important for me to be using cast iron or anything that distributes heat really well is because I am making a caramel sauce with my apples and my butter and my sugar. Great. And next, I'm gonna combine a little bit of vanilla with my sugar and then sprinkle it all over. You wanna try to keep it as even as possible because you don't want pockets with a lot of sugar, some with less, because then you might burn quicker in one corner. So this is where you get a little bit creative, and you can kind of have fun with how you put your apples in. I like to do it really simple. I just line them up like this, and look, that's the butter and sugar working. You don't have to worry about it. It's gonna stay put. And I just make them hug each other, like so, going all the way around the pan. Love it, how pretty is that? But there's a million different ways you can do this. You can go the opposite direction, you can do diagonal, tons of fun stuff. So I'm gonna take this and put this on the stove top, and I'm gonna be bubbling this. So I wanna create a caramel sauce at the base. So onto the stove this goes. So my apples are bubbling away, and what's happened is the juices from the apples have come down into the bottom of the pan and started mingling with all the sugar and the butter, basically creating a super delicious caramel sauce. So when I flip this upside down, all of that sauce is gonna cover the entire tart, really golden brown, gooey, and delicious. So these look about ready, so I've turned off my heat. I'm gonna let them cool down a little bit so when I add my pie dough, nothing will melt, and I can then stick it right in the oven. So my dough has been chilling in the fridge for about 30 minutes, so it's ready to roll out. First, I'm gonna dust a little bit of flour onto my surface just so it doesn't stick. And I wanna roll this out about 1/4 inch thick, but basically just a little bit larger than the skillet. Well, this definitely looks ready to go. And just for easiness, I'm gonna roll it onto my rolling pin, and it's ready to go, easy transportation to put onto my tarte tatin. So I've let my skillet cool down just a little bit so I don't burn my fingers when I work with the dough. I'm gonna roll my dough out, just over the skillet like so, and working really quickly, I'm just gonna roll in, pressing in so it's inside here. This is so that when it bakes, all of the juices are collected. You can get fancy with it, but I like it being kind of rustic, so I'm just pressing and twisting as I go. Great, so now I'm gonna tuck it into the oven and bake it for a while. Apples aren't just for dessert. Next, I'm making an entire meal out of them for lunch, so don't go away. Who doesn't love apples? I'm putting them in everything today with some pretty delicious results. So my tarte tatin is in the oven, so we'll see what that looks like in a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, I'm gonna get started on my salad, which is a super simple salad. It's just some apples, fennel, orange, mint, and butter lettuce. So it's really refreshing and really plays off that really bright, almost citrusy aspect of apples. So to start, I'm gonna break down my oranges by slicing them into supremes, which sounds kind of fancy, but basically I'm just doing little slices in between the membrane so you don't have to chew through anything when you have your oranges in your salad. The great thing here is it's really easy to eat. You don't have to use your fork to poke through anything, and you can just go ahead and bite right into it. And now, using what I have left over, I'm just gonna squeeze it and try to get a couple of tablespoons or so out of all of these oranges. It's a great way to use up the entire orange. And this is gonna give my vinaigrette a really lovely orangey flavor. So now I'm gonna just make my vinaigrette, and it's so easy. I don't think you will ever wanna buy one again after you see how simple it is to put together. The basic idea with a vinaigrette is the rule of 1 to 3. So you have 1 tablespoon of vinegar, acid, anything like that, and then 3 tablespoons of a fat. So for me today, I have balsamic vinegar and olive oil, and for a little bit of flavoring, orange juice. It doesn't have a lot of acid in there, so it's just mostly for flavor. So I'm going to add my balsamic. I'm just gonna eyeball it, because I can always adjust it. It's about a tablespoon, and then about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. There we go. And then a nice big pinch of salt for seasoning, a little bit of pepper. And the reason why I'm doing this in a jar is because instead of having to whisk and wait for everything to emulsify together, which means it all becomes one cohesive liquid, is I just shake it. And you can use any other container you have at home, just a little plastic one is totally fine. I had a jar handy, so I'm using a jar. So I'm gonna give it a taste with a little bit of this lettuce. And that's another thing, whatever you're putting the dressing on, use that for your tasting instead of a spoon, because that will tell you if the balance is right. All right, that tastes just about right. And it should be a little bit zippy. You shouldn't really get, whoa, vinegar or too much olive oil. It should all be in a nice balance, so I think this is good. So next, I'm going to slice my fennel. And you just want a really thin slice because it has a lot of flavor. It's really strong, and you want it as thin as you can get, just so you get a tiny hint of it. So next, I'm going to slice my apples, and I like slicing them horizontally because you get a really beautiful star pattern in the middle. And you want to slice these kind of as thinly as you slice the fennel. You can go a little bit thicker if you really like the flavor of apples. So you can see the really pretty pattern in here, and just to get the seeds out, you just poke them like that, and they'll come right out. And if you're trying to make this ahead of time, just put the apple slices into a lemon and water solution. That'll keep them really nice and crisp, and they won't turn brown. So I sliced up my apples and fennel, and I'm gonna get started on putting my salad together. So I'm gonna start with my base, and this is kind of a looser salad. I like it because you can use your fork and knife with it. You can kind of put together what you want in the salad. So I'm keeping it a little bit loose on the plate. I have these beautiful butter lettuce leaves. And if you want to use romaine or iceberg or anything like that, that's fine, but I love the flavor of butter lettuce and it just looks beautiful. So I'm gonna put those on the bottom, and I love the flavor of mint. It's not just a garnish, it has a really beautiful flavor all of its own. So I have some mint leaves here. I'm just gonna grab them and start tearing them up. And this is something you don't wanna do ahead of time because mint wilts and blackens really easily. So do this right before you're gonna serve the dish. And a little bit of mint goes a long way, so you don't have to do very much. Now I'm going to build my salad. I'm gonna add the fennel on bottom first. And then I'm going to top off with some really beautiful apple. And next, I'm going to add my segments of orange. Adds a really beautiful pop of color. Now I'm just gonna put a drizzle of the vinaigrette over the whole thing because I don't want to discolor any of it. It's so pretty. I just want to put a little light drizzle on. Just a sprig of mint right on top. And there you have it, a really simple, fresh, and fun way to use apples. So my tart tatin is out of the oven, and I've let it cool somewhat so it'll still unmold. You're gonna take your plate, put it on top, using both hands and your thumbs to keep it sturdy. You're just gonna say a prayer and then flip it. All right, let's see how it turned out. Ooh, looks good. You can see all of that work in terms of putting the apples in order. It has such a big wow factor. It looks gorgeous. You can see all of that caramelization. I cannot wait to eat this for lunch with my friend. I'm gonna set this aside and get started on the center of our lunch, a ham, cheddar, and apple slaw sandwich that is fantastic. So stay tuned. If you haven't figured it out by now, apples are one of my favorite fruit, and they're not just for dessert. I'm making a ham, cheddar, and apple slaw sandwich. The apple slaw is great with the savory ham and the sharp cheddar. So first, I'm going to start on my slaw, and it's super duper simple. I'm just gonna slice up some apples relatively thinly, slices small enough so you can put them on a sandwich. So I am using Braeburn apples for my slaw, and the reason why is because they're a really tart but full flavored apple. So they are gonna cut right through those rich flavors of the cheddar and the ham. So now I'm gonna finish up my slaw, and first start are some really finely diced shallot. And all shallot is sort of a milder onion with a little bit of a garlicky kick. It's great because you can use it raw, but it's also beautiful caramelized. And after that, parsley. I love the flavor because it's really bright and a little bit peppery, so it's wonderful with richer flavors like the ham and cheddar. Then a little bit of salt for seasoning and some pepper. So I'm just gonna loosely mix this up just so everything's evenly incorporated. And And next, I'm going to add my favorite ingredient, whole grain mustard. This stuff is so delicious. It's great, but it is a little bit more expensive. But when we're using so few ingredients, you can definitely afford to go a little bit splurgy on the mustard. So this looks just about right. Everything's really well coated. I'm gonna give it a taste because I like this even as a side. It's so perfect. You can really taste the parsley. It's really kicking all the flavors up, really elevating it with that brightness. Well, this looks great. I'm gonna set this aside and get started on the rest of my sandwich. So first, I'm gonna slice my baguette. I'm gonna slice it in half, and then in half again because I'm making 2 sandwiches. There we go. And then on one side, I'm going to put the cheese. So these look ready to go. I'm gonna set these up and put them in the oven. Bottoms too, because I want them toasted. So my cheese is beautifully melted, and the rest of the bread is just a little bit toasted, so I'm gonna get started on finishing these sandwiches. First, I'm gonna layer the whole bottom with some really lovely ham. And you can kind of do whatever you want. If you wanna go fancy, you can use prosciutto, but whatever you have at the deli or whatever's your favorite is totally fine. Next, I'm gonna add a little bit of my slaw, just right on top. And now I'm adding arugula. I love arugula because it has a little bit of a spicy and peppery kick that goes great with the ham and the cheese. And next, I'm gonna drizzle just a tiny bit of olive oil on top of the arugula just to moisten it. And now for the big moment, the cheesy toast going right on top. Just press it down ever so slightly to combine everything. There you go. It's warm, it's light, and it tastes great. My apple-inspired lunch is ready to go, and there's only one thing left to do. Taste it! My friend Yayo is coming over to help me shoot a video for my blog and sink his teeth into these apple-licious dishes. My friend Yayo is a cinematographer with a knack for shooting food. He's helped me with countless videos for my blog, and today we're putting my apple-centric lunch to the test. So what do you think? Is it ready to go on the blog?
I think so. Yeah, I really like the pattern that we have on this one. I think it would make a really good overhead shot. And then as far as the sandwich goes, who doesn't like melted cheese?
This is true. Okay, do you even like apples? I feel like I've never seen you eating an actual apple.
Well, where I'm from, we're kind of the state capital of Mexico. We're kind of like the Texas. So I grew up eating a lot of just meat and savory kind of stuff, not a lot of fruit. I'm so used to just seeing apples whole and you just bite into them. Apple pie or anything incorporating apples to me seems very American, and I'm excited to try these out.
Oh, cool. You're like my guinea pig. I can't wait to see what you think of everything.
I do not mind being a guinea pig when it comes to food.
You're always my guinea pig. Every video we've ever shot, you always end up eating it and telling me if it's good or not.
Well, that's why I started shooting initially.
Free food.
Yeah.
Well, you weren't always my #1 taste tester.
Nope.
I think it's so funny. I mean, I've known you for almost 5 years now.
Yeah.
We've only started working together in food for the last 2.
Yeah, I've always loved shooting. I always enjoyed creating visual things, but I never thought I could marry food, which I enjoy a lot, and video at the same time. Being able to take 2 things that I enjoy in life and turn it into a career is something that I really enjoyed.
Well, I prepared a bunch of different apple recipes today, each kind of highlighting different aspects of an apple, so you will be filled with all kinds of apple knowledge by the end of the day. We have a really lovely, bright, citrusy apple, fennel, and orange salad with a little bit of mint. And then we have a ham, cheddar, and apple slaw sandwich. And the apples are covered in like whole grain mustard and really zippy, savory things. So I think it pairs really nicely. And then, we have a tarte tatin, which is like the French grandmother of apple dishes. And it's really caramelized and beautiful.
I think this is my favorite because it'll be really easy to shoot.
All right, well, let's dig in.
Let's see if I agree. Oh, wow.
We're digging it.
One thing I always like about the way you prepare things is that there's always a really good combination, which I mean things are always really well balanced.
Good, well that's 1 out of 3. Let's see how I'm gonna do on the next one.
I don't want to use the word surprised, but that was really good.
Oh,
Yeah. No, this is the first time in my life I've had a sandwich with apples in it.
Well, I mean, the inspiration behind this was just a cheese board. On cheese boards, there's usually some kind of cheddar, sliced apple, and then prosciutto or some other kind of pork product. So I just thought they all went together so well. Why not just put them in a sandwich?
Genius.
Oh, yes, I try. All right, let's slice into this tartatan. And not being a major sweet tooth, you have to tell me what you think of it.
Well, that, and I've never had this before.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, let me top you off with a little bit of maple whipped cream.
Oh, this keeps getting better.
I know, right? I love maple and apples together. All right, give it a bite and let me know.
Oh, wow.
Digging it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming by and trying all the new recipes.
Mm-hmm.
They're worthy. Videos in the future? Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for watching us today. I had so much fun cooking for the blog apple of my eye, Yayo. So come back again next week for more recipes on Food for Thought.